Now, as important as the 90-day session of the General Assembly is each year, most Marylanders pay very little attention to the bills being passed until June, when many of those laws begin to take effect. Mark, over the past 2 years, according to Maryland Matters, the rate of the gas tax increase by more than 30% due to inflation and surging fuel prices. And now, thanks to the General Assembly, it's going to go up an additional 10%. Why would the governor and the legislature, allow such a regressive tax increase go into effect during such a high inflationary period?
Well, of course, this tax has been on autopilot for a number of years. It was set a number of years ago, and while effort, and it was bipartisan, Peter Franchot supported the effort to stop this automatic reset that took place. It is also somewhat reflective of the fact that the transportation finances, both for Maryland but other states, are really in jeopardy because they're dependent on the gas tax. Frequently, electric and vehicles are essentially exempt from having to pay for transportation. A. And B, much of the funding goes to mass public transportation, and Fairfax revenues have not recovered since COVID, and so there's a yawning gap that public transportation is facing, that basically the budget makers look to the gas tax to continue to fund. So as we pay for higher gas, more for gas, what we're effectively paying for is the fact that folks are not returning to public transportation.
Well, I mean, the problem is, more than that. I mean, people are not driving as much, at least.
Well, yeah, there's that and more fuel efficient cars. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that transportation fund is not is challenged.
Well, I switched from a gas guzzler to a hybrid years ago, just because I wanted to double my mileage. I know that's very very important personal information that the audience wants to know. Cary, the General Assembly, switching gears for a second, passed a lot of green energy laws this past year. One that I found, was kind of anti-consumer and really anti-small business was a requirement for all medium and heavy-duty vehicles, in other words, pickup trucks, be required to be zero emission free beginning in 2027. I drive around a lot in Montgomery County, and I see lots of contractors with their pickup trucks and so on. These vehicles aren't cheap. I mean, really, by 2027, everybody's going to have to start buying electric pickup trucks.
I'm a contractor, electrical contractor. I wire electric vehicle charging stations. I'm all for electric vehicles, but we're not there yet. I mean, the entire workforce for our county drive vans, they drive pickup trucks, and it affects the cost of everything that you do to your home. The reality is there still needs to be advancements in batteries, in automobile circuitry. To suggest that we're going to be ready by 2027, I don't see that. I just don't see it. Not to mention, we don't have enough electric vehicle charging stations. I mean, What are we going to do?
My son is is operations manager for a liquor wholesaler near Baltimore, and they're already beginning to price out, how many charging stations they will need if and when they have to go to, electric vehicles. And they don't have a huge fleet of, it's a smaller wholesaler, but they do have 10 vehicles that that they have to maintain. So.
We're close, but we're not there yet, and I don't see us being there by 2027. I think there needs to be more work.
Well, the other thing that we need to also reflect on is the cost of electricity is going up, and part of the reason for that is as we try and transition to more intermittent renewable. We also need the backup in order to have the reliability of the basically natural gas fired plants to come online when the wind and the sun isn't there. There's huge challenges to have enough electricity at an affordable price. There's this, and we've already talked about the overall the infrastructure for charging. We're a long ways off, but these rules have been kind of put in as a kind of command and control that if the legislature, if policymakers will it, it'll all be there. And that's just not a realistic proposition.
Well, what makes this worse is that Maryland is adopting the California rule. This was not a rule that they initiated themselves. They're adopting the California rule. Before we leave our focus on the legislature, Mark, I wanted to ask you about the horse racing industry, because once again, they've extended the Maryland Horse Act to support the horse racing industry. Just at the same time, we're learning that Laurel Racetrack and Pimlico are doing away with off-track betting. Isn't this just a dying industry that we should just let die along with buggy whips?
Well, it isn't just that it's a dying industry. It's an industry that has continued to rely on, I guess the number is around $50 million a year in subsidies. And with, as you described, declining participation, declining attendance, declining handles, and everything else. But inevitably, the response in Maryland is, what about the Preakness, which is this one-day event that was once iconic to the state, but I'm not sure that the continued expenditure to maintain the industry is justified with that.
Well. And so the last topic we want to touch on Cary, is, the legislature has approved the recreational use of marijuana effective July 1st. At the same time, they have also restricted law enforcement from stopping a vehicle when the only reason is to suspect that marijuana is being used in the vehicle. They may smell the odor, they may see smoke, but they're not allowed to stop a vehicle under those conditions. Now, there may be other reasons they can make a traffic stop, but for the purpose of just marijuana, they're not permitted to. Where was Mothers Against Drunk Driving when this bill passed? I mean, driving while impaired with alcohol and driving while impaired with from substance abuse of marijuana is an issue, and people are going to be harmed by this. What do you think?
I think it's against the law. I think that it can harm people. I'm sorry. If you want to decriminalize marijuana, I'm okay with that. Okay, but if you're talking about potentially life-threatening situations, I don't want to see the police hampered. Do your job. If there's a child out there walking the street and you've got some guy that's high on marijuana driving a car, well, guess what? One of the others got to go. Either the child's got to stop walking across the street, or the marijuana driver's just got to stop smoking marijuana. Nobody should be impaired when they drive. I'm sorry. It just shouldn't happen.
It's interesting. There are already public safety ads that are being circulated and watched about marijuana impaired driving, where 4 people are in a vehicle and they all said, "Well, I can't drive. I can't drive." And they end up having a little picnic on the side, in their front lawn. So it's a recognizable problem, and one hopefully that people won't be harmed by.